this first story that we're covering is fantastic because it's a media story. The MSNBC are refusing to cover Trump's post-arraignment speech because MSNBC says Rachel Maddow, who you know I have no axe to grind with. I think Rachel Maddow seems like a really nice person. Let me know in the chat if you agree. I feel like that Rachel Maddow says it would be irresponsible of her to broadcast Trump's post-arraignment chat because he will say things that are disinformation, malinformation, and yet we know that MSNBC have broadcast so many examples of misinformation in the past. Let me know in the comments in the chat what examples you come up with. Few clues. Russiagate, that's one. The medication. But you tell us your own. Tell us your own right now. And if you're watching this on Rumble right now, press the red button and join us on Locals. That's a vast and thriving community. The things they talk about in there. It bends your bones, don't it, Gal?
Certainly does.
But at least it's not misinformation. Look at Rachel Maddow on MSNBC saying that they have to censor Trump for, well, I don't actually know why, because there used to be a time when we were considered capable to discern for ourselves the nature of truth and fiction. Let's have a look.
Now, tonight, after his arraignment on federal felony charges, he's speaking again, this time to an audience of his supporters that's gathered for a campaign fundraiser tonight at his golf club and summer home in New Jersey. We knew heading into this that he was planning to make these remarks. We are prepared for his pre-fundraiser remarks tonight to again be essentially a Trump campaign speech. Because of that, we do not intend to carry these remarks live.
What I think is interesting is it's now become overt. The process of censorship has become explicit and is being legitimized as it happens. We cannot show you Trump because he's going to be campaigning. But America is supposed to be a free country. We're supposed to be able to ascertain for ourselves whether or not we want to take Donald Trump seriously, to dismiss him, to arraign him, to lock him up. But of course, the great hypocrisy at the heart of this is we know that MSNBC has previously published untrue information. And remember, and let me know in the chat if you agree with this, part of what we feel is significant is that we're not talking about the contents of the boxes. Did Trump have vital information that proves that the US have been planning a war with Iran? Let me know in the chat what you think about that. Let's have a look at the rest of this from Rachel Maddow before demonstrating other clear examples of MSNBC broadcasting untrue information, which shows, look, if they won't broadcast some information because because it's untrue, that's the reason they're giving, and yet they broadcast other information that we know to be untrue, that shows you there's an agenda. I guess our key point is, what is the agenda that MSNBC are carrying? Let's look.
As we have said before in these circumstances, there is a cost to us as a news organization to knowingly broadcast untrue things. We are here to bring you the news. It hurts our ability to do that if
I can't take any more of that. Let's have a look at Rachel Maddow on COVID-19 vaccines. If you're watching this on YouTube, obviously I'm not saying whether this is true or not. You can decide for yourself using the WHO's guidelines, which they still use on YouTube. Have a look. Join us on Rumble if you want to see a more exclusive, insightful take on this. We'll be talking to Michael Schellenberger about this in a minute. Let's have a look.
Right? Instead of the virus being able to hop from person to person to person, potentially mutating and becoming more virulent and drug resistant along the way. Now we know that the vaccines work well enough that the virus stops with every vaccinated person. A vaccinated person gets exposed to the virus does not infect them. The virus cannot then use that person to go anywhere else.
Today, that information is still on YouTube. As of today, MSNBC have not retracted that information. Now, if that were one isolated example, you could say that we're cherry picking, and indeed to a point we are narrativizing. But let's move now to the subject of war. Many people say that the Democratic Party have become the de facto party of war. That's why Tulsi Gabbard, who's coming on the show soon, says she left the Democrat Party. Now, another thing we've done content on before is MSNBC's framing of military-industrial complex employees as experts without declaring their ties and relationships with organizations like Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, who obviously benefit from ongoing war. Many of the retired military leaders employed by MSNBC are paid contributors and have secondary affiliations that are rarely, if ever, mentioned, leaving viewers in the dark about whose interests they're promoting. None of the leading networks, including obviously MSNBC, makes a regular practice of announcing its military analysts' financial ties to the Pentagon, connections that could color their on-air comments, As documented in a Pulitzer Prize-winning series, The New York Times by the Times in 2008, the Pentagon orchestrated the commentary of 75 former officers who served as radio and TV analysts. So that's one example. And then I know what you lot are typing in the comments now. And if you're not joining us on Locals yet, press that red button and join us there now. Russiagate. That's what you're going to be talking about. You're going to be talking about the way that MSNBC and the mainstream media at large covered the allegations that Trump was a Russian asset, which we now know was completely untrue and understood to be true by the deep state and the government themselves from very early on in the process. Here's Rachel Maddow, by coincidence, reporting on that very subject. Let's have a look.
If the presidency is effectively a Russian op, right? If the American presidency right now is the product of collusion between the Russian intelligence services and an American campaign, I mean, that is so profoundly big. We not only need to stay focused on figuring it out, we need to start preparing for what the consequences are going to be if it proves to be true.
Now, I know that Rachel Maddow is acting in good faith, even though we know that she appeared at an event sponsored by Lockheed Martin very recently to promote, I don't know, diversity or something extraordinary, important, but perhaps something that could do without the funding of Lockheed Martin. But if she's acting in good faith, it just shows you that the need for transparency and a lack of censorship is paramount, because here is someone reporting in good faith things that have been proven to be completely untrue and participating in the censorship, would you call it censorship? Let me know in the chat, of Trump's post-arraignment speech, making a decision for MSNBC viewers on their behalf of what information to take seriously and what information to ignore. Now, this is where we on Stay Free want to broaden out your perspective a little wider by using this article by Branko Markitic talking about the contents of those boxes. You know, remember, we've asked you before, we just accept as a matter of course that there's information that's kept from us, and we're supposed not to question what the contents of top secret information and dossiers might be. Is it that UFOs are real and have been collaborating and communicating diplomatically with our governments for potentially 50, 60 years, at least since Roswell? Are there plans for forever wars, ongoing expedient conflicts that are beneficial financially to the establishment but not beneficial to the people of Middle Eastern nations in particular? Now look at what some people allege are in those boxes. This is from Branko Markitic's Substack. Is that right, Gareth?
It's on Jacobin, actually.
It's on Jacobin, which I believe to be a left-wing publication. And again, this is one of our key points. Right-wing, left-wing, it doesn't matter anymore. We've got to find new anti-establishment alliances that from across the spectrum. We can't get caught up in these identity wars. We can't get trapped in these old categories because we won't be able to move forward together. That's another one of the things I'll be talking to Michael Schellenberger about in a minute. Get your questions ready for him, for heaven's sake. In a detail that's been almost entirely glossed over, central to this case are a set of secret government plans for attacking Iran. Other than as a purely factual matter, or how to stress how recklessly Trump treated classified information, this has been little remarked upon. Let me know in the chat, do you think that's more significant than the fact he took boxes? What's contained in the boxes? Remember, with the recent Pentagon Papers Part 2 released by Buddy Boy Taxera, we were all focusing on him and what his political views were. He's just a kid. Who cares what his political views are? He's a nitwit. No one knows anything at that age anyway, do they? Let me know in the chat. Instead of focusing on the fact that he revealed there were boots on the ground, tootsies on the floor over there in Ukraine, the war was widely regarded to be unwinnable. This is important, vital information, certainly more important than personal information about the whistleblower. The issue stems from Trump's apparent frustration with what he claimed was a false narrative being pushed by the press that after losing the 2020 election under the advice of Benjamin Netanyahu, Trump was dangerously close to ordering strikes on Iran that could have triggered full-scale war and had to be talked down from it by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley. So I suppose what is being claimed by Trump, or what potentially is true, is that this documentation proves which side of that argument he was on. Was Trump trying to prevent an attack on Iran, or was Trump agitating for an attack on Iran? You know what you know about the establishment. Let us know what you think in the chat. And let me know why it's become so important to pursue Trump and why it's become so important to distract us, the public, from the contents of these boxes. What do you think about all this, Gareth?
I mean, I think it comes down to, with MSNBC, credibility at the end of the day. I mean, when we're talking about, I mean, Michael himself, who will be on soon, has written about the fact that when it comes to, we saw the clip about her talking about the vaccine, Pfizer itself has poured money into news media organisations to promote not just the vaccine itself, but the crackdown on disfavoured speech. So we already know there's not a credibility there when you know that this organisation is receiving millions of dollars from companies such as Pfizer. You know there's a conflict of interest there.
So Pfizer promote their own product and also fund the censorship of information that's not favourable for them. Now,
Correct.
Schellenberger, if you've heard of him, it's probably because of his great work on the Twitter files, which itself was the great revelation that the deep state and social media platforms are more involved with one another than was previously admitted, and maybe more than was previously imagined, in order to censor sometimes true information, like Zuckerberg himself admitted true information was taken down. Why? And how can these claims be made by MSNBC now? What credibility does the mainstream have left when we know how they're funded, when we know how they position pundits and experts, when we know which team they are batting for? Now, you know us, we don't care about the Republicans or the Democrats. I don't think that the Republicans are meaningfully better than the Democrat Party. Let me know in the chat if you disagree with that.
With relation to the vaccine, you can give the argument of the science was evolving and changing all the time. And I think that's a valid argument. It was shifting all the time. And Rachel Maddow could say, well, at one time we thought this and then it shifted. But when it came to Russiagate and the Steele dossier, this is from the Washington Post, the FBI concluded that the dossier was mostly a jumble of claims that were inaccurate, unconfirmed, or already publicly reported. Sourcing for the dossier was threadbare in the most charitable of depictions. So this is a time when Rachel Maddow and everyone else on MSNBC was going on air to say, this is definitely true. Trump's affiliated with Russia. There's collusion going on. When we now know from the FBI that this was all unsubstantiated at the time.
So do you believe that they believed the information was true, or that they wanted it to be true and reported it on that basis, whether that's on the subjects that coalesced around the pandemic period, or indeed around advocating and agitating for war, or Russiagate? How do MSNBC treat the information that they convey? How do they treat you as an audience member? Are they interested in an ongoing discourse? Are they interested in presenting information in a fair and balanced way, or are they interested in supporting particular ideas, particular candidates, and conveying particular propaganda? Stay free with Russell Brand. See it first on Rumble.